Hey guys, Brian at Victory 4x4. Today I'm going to show you how to install a front skid and a mid skid on your second and third gen Toyota Tacoma. So the first step to put the front skid on, you're going to want to remove your factory tin can here. It's using 4 12mm bolts. There's one located here, and then there's two behind this air dam up here. So we'll take that out. It'll bring this shell down and we can throw it in the garbage. On the front of the skid, there is a clip right here and a clip right here, and on the frame there are little tabs that hold it. So once you get all 4 of these bolts out, the skid will hang, and then as you saw, you'll kind of have to jimmy it and it'll eventually come right out. Okay, so once we have that outer skid off, we're going to remove these cross members. There's 2. So the driver's side has 4 bolts. This one only has 3. We're going to retain a couple of the bolts because we're going to use them when we install our skid. So just go ahead and pull these guys down. Okay, so we're going to be fishing these 2 little block plates into this cross member, and you're going to come in right out here from the lower control arm skids, and you can see it kind of rolls down like a slide, and that guy's going to go there, and that one goes right there. Pretty good shot actually. We're going to put the bolt through here and the nut will fish in from the top. So once those are slid into place, we're going to put the front skid on using the bolts in the front, and then we're going to put a couple bolts in the back here. So we can go ahead and get that going. When we remove that front air dam, I told you to retain some of the bolts. We're going to use 2 of them, as you can see here. So these are the ones with the 17mm head. Those are going to hold our skid up in the front of the front skid. And this is the hardware for the back. So each one of these, we have a 1/2-inch button head bolt and a flange nut. These are going to go through the cross member, up through our skid, through the cross member, through those little spacers we put in the cross member, and we'll fish these down and bolt it in place. Okay, so you have the front skid kind of in place, ready to go up. You'll see we have this front flange. That's going to go against the front cross member that's up here behind the air dam to kind of show you where this thing needs to go. Then those 2 factory bolts are going to go into these locations back to where they were. Then we're going to install the rear. So let's get this thing jacked up into place and we'll get that done. And we're going to leave those loose until we get the back done. So now we're going to install the hardware on the back. The 1/2-inch button head bolts, they're going to go right through here, through those brackets up there. We're going to feed a nut down from the top. So you're just going to kind of drop her in there and then kind of look up and kind of eyesight what you're doing and fish it all together. Go ahead and get that started. And you can tighten the nuts up from the inside like that. Then you're going to want to kind of eyeball the skid to make sure that it's centered in here, because you can see there's some movement. So you're just going to kind of center this gap and this gap. Using a 5/16 Allen, you can tighten these up. All right, so now using a 17mm socket, we're going to tighten these up here. Okay, so this is your access. So if you ever need to do an oil change, you can reach up here and get access to your oil filter. This is the cover plate we have for it. It uses some little button head bolts and some flange nuts. These are actually a 3/16 Allen. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna just kind of fish it in here and reach in from the side. Put your nut on the back. All right, so now that we have that fished in, we're gonna wanna make sure this thing aligns. You can kind of move it around a little bit to see where it lines up the bend line. Then using a 3/16 Allen, go ahead and tighten that up. You don't need to hold the nut on the back side because it's a flange nut, so it actually holds itself like that. And that's how easy it is to install the front skid on a Tacoma. 2nd gen, 3rd gen. Now I'm going to show you guys how to do the mid skid. Okay, so we have these like bars that kind of protect the cats. There's one on each side. Uses 4 12mm head bolts. We're going to go ahead and take these out and remove this guy. And discard those. Okay, back again. Mid cross member here, we have these little plates. They're going to fish in on the outside of this one as opposed to where we put the inside ones in. Same thing, just get this guy down here. Come here. Line that up there. And line that guy up right about there. Here's the hardware that you need to mount the mid skid. It's very similar to the front. You have the 1/2" button head bolts with the flange nuts. Those are going to go through that mid cross member where we fish those little plates through. And then we have these 8mm button head bolts that are going to go back into that cross member where those cat guards go. So these just reuse those factory threaded holes. So let's get the skid up there and get it installed. Okay, skid in place up here. We're going to go ahead and jack it up. You're going to notice that it has this negative side of what the front skid has so that they kind of nest together. So carefully kind of align those guys. And now we're going to fish a nut. Come here. I lost my nut, Cameron. Cameron, I lost my nut. Okay, so with both skids in place, it's a little more difficult to drop the nut down and align it. So my expert camera guy said, hey, why don't you stick a screwdriver up through the hole and then drop the nut over the screwdriver? So we're gonna do that. He's a genius, by the way. So I'm just sticking this straight up all the way through to the top of here, and then I can feel the screwdriver on the top of the frame, and I'm dropping the nut down like that. And now, voila. Maybe he should be doing the install video instead of me. If you guys only knew how handsome he was and smart. That was a good one, man. Like 10 of 10. All right, so now we're gonna do the same thing on the other side. All right, as my handsome, extra smart camera guy suggested, stick the screwdriver up, drop the nut over it. And then I'm putting a little pressure down on the nut with my finger just so I can get it started. Okay, so I was saying earlier, we're going to be using these factory threaded holes. There's 4 of them. So we have 2 on each side through our little slots here. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna kind of move the skid around to line them up and get them started. Like that. Okay, so those guys aren't lining up perfect. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna loosen the front skid and allow me to kind of jimmy everything around to line it up. Okay, so I loosened the front skid. Now I can freely move this guy, make sure I get these aligned. You do not want to cross thread these, so make sure that they line up, and we'll just tighten everything back up when we're done. So now, since this is the furthest back skid we're gonna do, we're gonna go ahead and tighten these up. Now, if you're installing our transfer case skid, it's gonna mount up here on the back side of this cross member and line up with the rest of this. but it doesn't have any relevance on where these are located. They don't index together, so once you have these two tightened, when you add the cross mount or the transmission transfer case, when you add the transfer case skid plate, that one will not nest into this one, so it's not as critical. So I'm using a 3/16 Allen still that we used earlier. And I'm tightening these down. With those tight, we're gonna go ahead and snug everything up. I'll get this jack out of the way and I'll show you what I'm doing. Okay, so now we have all these in. You wanna make sure nothing's like overlapping. They just kind of sit in here together, nest in. Once again, we are using a 5/16 Allen. As you can see, everything is lined up. Now I'm going to use a 17mm socket and tighten up the front of the front skid. Okay, so that is the front skid, mid skid installed on your Toyota Tacoma. A couple of notes. You see these square holes here and here and here and here. We use those for drainage so that when you're on the trail and you're kicking up a lot of dirt and dust and stuff, it's all going to collect inside your skids. You're going to want to rinse that out. That's where you drain out. This hole right here, not only is it used for drainage, but it also is the access point for your drain plug for your oil change. Now, they make a valve that you can screw in there, and then it has like a little peacock valve that you can turn it on and off to drain your oil. Now that it's all protected, you can install one of those, and you won't have to worry about hitting it and opening it and losing all your oil. At that point, then you have a little filler tube, and you can just drag it out, drain it into a pan. Makes life a lot easier. So if you want to do that, you can look into that. Up here in this thing is where you remove this panel to access your oil filter. Then you can reach up there and change your oil filter. Otherwise, you should never have to take these down unless you're doing major repairs. As you can see, a nice flat bottom to your Tacoma. And then from there, you can add on the rest of our skids. We have a TK skid that bolts there, and we also have a gas tank skid. So anyways, thanks for watching. Hope to see you on the trail.